We're back here, whole 9 yards on a Monday afternoon. Drew Pien here with Brandon Krikorian. A lot of stuff's actually happened over the weekend. One of the most action-packed weekends so far. But how's it going?
Everything's good. Yeah, I mean, March Madness, NFL free agency. There was some basketball news too. So yeah, there was a lot of stuff going on this weekend.
Today's actually somebody's birthday.
Is it your birthday?
It's J.J. Watt's birthday.
Oh, it's JJ Watt's birthday.
It's also my birthday though. So
Oh, it is okay. Well, happy
Yeah.
birthday.
thank you.
I was
thank
actually, you know what? I was actually wondering when your birthday was. I don't know why I was wondering that, but I was.
Yeah, well, it's today. It's a pretty good day. I mean, it's like 60 degrees out, so
Yeah.
I'm not exactly sure what I'll be doing outside, but maybe I'll do something. But yeah, as far as March Madness is going, round of 64 done with, round of 32 halfway done with. My champion last night, Oklahoma State, was eliminated by Oregon State. Pretty unfortunate. I mean, how's your bracket doing?
Mine's actually doing pretty well. It took a hit now 2 nights ago, or at least I guess I'll say it was, what was it, Saturday night? When Texas lost, I had Texas going to my Final Four. I still have my champion Gonzaga still in there. They play today, but Texas lost, Oklahoma State lost. I had them in my Final Four also, so now I only have Baylor and Gonzaga left for my Final Four, even though I did have them both in the championship, so I'm still good with that. But I did take a hit with Texas and Oklahoma State losing.
Yeah, I mean, I've got two Final Four teams out. Obviously, my champion's out. I made a couple other brackets as well. I've got a bracket with Michigan winning it all. That bracket's, I mean, it's doing all right. I mean, I've got one Final Four team out, and that's Illinois, and I also had Illinois in the championship game, but so that was unfortunate. But
Yeah, and I mean, I was looking good. Like the first day, I was looking pretty well. I mean, I had a couple like picks that I thought could have worked. I had who was it? Colgate over Arkansas. That was looking pretty good when the game was happening, but then I mean, it ended up being a 17-point game, but it was close the whole way through. But that was like an upset that I picked. I think I had Oregon State over Tennessee first round, and obviously they beat Oklahoma State last night, which I had them losing that game. But there were a couple of other ones that I think I picked. I don't think anyone had Oral Roberts over Ohio State. That was one.
yeah, I was just gonna say. I mean, I think
I had them in my Elite Eight, so it wasn't terrible, but I wish they would have won the first round at least.
yeah, no, I mean, yeah, no, I'd agree. But for me, Oral Roberts, 100% the most exciting two games that I've watched. It's just, I mean, they're just such a exciting team. They shoot the ball really well. The game they just played against Florida was, I mean, it was so entertaining. I mean, we've only seen two 15 seeds now get to the Sweet 16. I forget exactly who they play. They play Arkansas.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just not too much of an expert on college basketball. I'm not sure that like a bunch of people really are. Nobody has ever can really predict this type of stuff. But yeah, I mean, I'm super excited for that game. That's probably the game I'm most excited for, even though it's a 15 seed. It's just I want to see Oral Roberts go to like the Final Four. I want to see them go as far as they can go. I'll be rooting for them for the rest of the tournament as long as they're in it.
Yeah, and it's weird looking at the games so far. I mean, it's only been halfway, but for the Sweet 16, I mean, you have Baylor, Villanova, so that's a 1-5. So I mean, I'd say it's pretty common. But then you have Arkansas, Oral Roberts. It's a 3-15 matchup. Obviously, they're only the second 15 seed to get to the Sweet 16. Then you have Loyola Chicago, who took down Illinois yesterday. That was a pretty convincing win, honestly. They played. They deserved to win that game. That wasn't like a fluke game. They clearly outplayed Illinois that game. They're playing Oregon State, who obviously, like I said, beat Oklahoma State. So that's an 8-12 seed matchup. And then you have Syracuse, who beat who they beat? West Virginia. Yeah. So that's an 11-2. They play Houston.
But wow, I mean, did Syracuse just try to lose that game down the stretch?
Yeah,
it was miserable. I mean, I was concerned there for a sec. I was kind of rooting for Syracuse. I mean, as far as March Madness and more in general is concerned, I mean, I typically root for the underdogs or in this case like the lower seeds. But yeah, Syracuse, I mean, they tried to lose that game really.
Yeah, and the team they're playing probably should have lost last night against Rutgers. Houston, I mean, Rutgers,
Yeah.
I thought Rutgers was going to win. They were up 10. I forget how much time was left, but they were up 10 somewhat late in the second half, and they just completely blew that game. I mean, they were up, I think it was 4 or 5 points, and they tried running out the clock on like 3 consecutive
Yep.
possessions. Like, they weren't up enough points in order to do that, and that was just a bad loss for Rutgers, and it really looked like they should have won, which, again, it would have been an 11-10 matchup for the Sweet 16. So definitely a lot of upsets so far, and there easily could have been a couple more, especially yesterday in those games.
Yeah, Rutgers had so many bad shots down the stretch, just trying to drain the clock. If I can remember correctly, there's so many games I watched yesterday. But yeah, but as far as East and West side of the bracket, we've got some pretty exciting games today. I know Gonzaga plays today. Creighton, I have them winning it all in one of my brackets. They play today. USC with Evan Mobley plays today. They play tonight. Michigan obviously plays today. So my second bracket that I have set up. So this way I always have somebody to root for, I guess, to win it all. I have Michigan winning it all. I'm not really confident in it, honestly. I could see LSU beating Michigan like today, honestly.
Yeah, if Michigan still had their best player, then I probably would have picked them farther. I think I had them losing to Florida State in the Sweet 16. So if they would have had their best player, he's out with that injury, I probably would have picked them farther. But yeah, they could easily lose today to LSU. I wouldn't be surprised by that, honestly.
Yeah, I think when you were picking the tournament, like a few days ago or whatever, if you're gonna pick a 1 seed to go down in the round of 32, it was gonna be Michigan and not Illinois, which ended up obviously. I guess Michigan could go out in the round of 32 as well, but I definitely did not foresee Illinois losing to Loyola Chicago. Even I was just watching some YouTubers, make their brackets or whatever, and even like loyal Chicago fans were like, yeah, we saw Loyola Chicago go on a run a few years ago, but I don't see it against Illinois this year. And that was a very surprising game, but
Yeah, and people were saying that they shouldn't have been an 8 seed. I didn't watch Loyola Chicago. I don't really watch college basketball, but I definitely didn't watch them. But people were saying they should have been a higher seed. It's just that they didn't play anyone from their I guess their conference isn't that good, and they weren't playing anyone out of conference because of the COVID stuff. So I think people thought they really could have been like a 5 seed, maybe 6 seed, honestly. But yeah, to beat Illinois, who was probably the third best team in the country, or I guess maybe the fourth best team in the country the whole year. Yeah, that was definitely surprising, and they beat them from start to end in that game. They didn't have any lapses. They completely dominated them defensively and offensively. Whatever the center's name is, the Krutwig or whatever his name was, he was probably the best player in that game yesterday.
yeah. And as far as March Madness as a format, I just forgot because going into the tournament, I actually wasn't really too excited about it for some reason. But when just watching all these games, it makes me remember why I actually just love March Madness. Just the one and done aspect of it is just so good. The fact that if you're just the better team on that specific day, you're gonna win and you're advancing. And if you don't play as the better team, even if you're the 1 seed, you're not going home. And if you look at the NBA, the NHL, and MLB. All these series are if you have the more talent and the better coach, 90% of the time you're going to win. Especially in the NBA. The only series that we've seen as of recent, significant series where the better team doesn't win or the more talented team doesn't win is probably the 2016 finals. Other than that though, if you have more talent, you're just going to win. You're just going to win. And the one and done aspect of it and especially close games, the end of games, just the competitiveness. It's so competitive. It's like a game 7 every game. It's so exciting to me. And yeah, and I honestly wish that we could reverse. I wish I could go back in time a few more days, and then I could just do way more research on my bracket and stuff like that. But yeah,
The thing is though is research doesn't even really help.
it doesn't. But
it can help in some aspects, I guess, but who would ever expect Oral Roberts to win, or Albine Christian and all these teams to win these games?
No, yeah, that is true, but
because I used to try and do some research, but I feel like I know sports pretty well, and I'd always have like maybe like we'd have like a 30-person bracket or a 30-person group, and I'd probably be like 15th or something like that. It's just and then the person who doesn't do any research, they finish with the best bracket. It's just
Yeah.
it's weird how it works, and no matter like even if you try not to focus, like when I was making mine, I tried not even to like look at any stats or anything, and I did pretty well, but then you have the teams that upset, and then you have your teams that go into the Final Four or championship that lose early. So it's all just picking and choosing and guessing. You can't really do any research about this.
No, yeah, you're definitely right on that. I mean, I forget. I think the guy's name is Greg, who had the best bracket of all time. He was like the guy. He got. I think it was a few years ago. He got like the first 49 games correctly or something. He was perfect up until the Sweet 16 or whatever. But Oklahoma State last night. I want to go back to that. I mean, Cade Cunningham. What'd you think? I mean, he's 100% gonna be the number one pick unless something weird happens. But
Yeah, I would assume he'd be the first pick. He wasn't great last night, but I think he was obviously their best player on that team, and he had to do a lot in order for them to win that game. So it's only one game. He had a really good season, but he definitely wasn't great last night. I didn't watch the whole game, but what I've watched, he just didn't look great. And for them, the reason I really picked them to go to the Final Four was I was thinking if he could just go off every single game, which is hard to do, for the first 4 or 5 games, whatever it is to get to the Final Four. But last night was just an off night. I think it was 6 of 20 from the field, but I think he had 20 points or 24 points or something like that. So he can still have an impact if he's not shooting well.
the game was super close, and even the announcer ended up saying it. He was just like, "It's a close game. Oregon State's gonna have to play insanely well because Oklahoma State has. I mean, they probably have the best closer, or at least one of the best closers in all the tournament." And yeah, Cade. I mean, I'm not gonna necessarily blame him. It is college basketball, and I would say college basketball is more of a team sport than the NBA, and it's March Madness. It's one game, but yeah, it was super disappointing to see Cade go down in the round of 32 because he was. I mean, that was the team I wanted to watch the most. Was that team? And today, I mean, I'm excited to watch USC. I mean, I'm excited to see. I mean, Evan Mobley, I'm excited for. I think he'll be a top 4 pick in the draft for sure. He might even go 2, but yeah.
Yeah, and I was high on USC too. I think I had them in my Elite 8. I had them losing to Gonzaga. So, yeah, I was looking forward to seeing Evan Mobley play, Cade Cunningham play, because you're right. Cade's most likely the number 1 pick. It's rather going to be like the Rockets or the Timberwolves who get that pick, and they'll definitely take Cade. And then
I hope it's not I really hope it's not the Timberwolves.
I hope so not. I also hope so. That's not the Timberwolves because that's where people just go to die, honestly. If you look at, like Cat, Wiggins. I know Wiggins wasn't great, but Wiggins, Edwards, he's probably going to be the same as like a Wiggins. So, yeah, I at least hope it's the Rockets because they're at least a bigger market team. I know obviously they've lost 20 games in a row now, but they're clearly just tanking because
I would love to see another quote unquote upset where the 6th worst team like the Pelicans ends up getting the number 1 pick.
Yeah, and it's not even now with the way they do the draft, it's like if you're the worst record in the NBA, you honestly have a less chance of getting the number 1 pick than you did just like 4 years ago when they changed the rules. So you would rather have like the 3rd or 4th worst record because I think you have technically it's the same chance at like 14%.
It's the 3 worst teams in the league have the same percentage.
Yeah,
so.
But it seems like the worst team in the league never gets the first pick ever since they changed it. I think it was 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah, I mean
the Knicks had it, they didn't get it. They had the 3rd pick, and then the Warriors had it last year. They got the 2nd pick. So.
Yeah, no, it is. I mean, it's chance based. It's only I think it's only a 14% chance. So I mean, it hasn't been a big enough sample size. But yeah, like as long as we'll see what happens as far as that's concerned. But yeah, I mean, March Madness. Games going on right now. I know Iowa's playing right now. Right?
I think they're down like 15.
Yeah, they're down. Yeah, they're down.
Oregon.
They're down by 10.
I guess we didn't even talk about this, but I mean, Oregon, they got a discontinuation against VCU, a disqualification, I should say.
The game was just like a no contest, and I mean, I wasn't exactly too sure on how that works. I mean, I guess VCU was the one that like introduced the whole COVID thing into it.
Yeah,
I think was that just was that why they were the ones not moving on, or was it just because they're the lower seed? I don't. To be honest, I'm not even too sure on that.
Yeah, I think when I saw it seemed like it was a VCU problem more than an Oregon problem as to the COVID thing. So I don't know if that means they had a test or if someone they were
Yeah.
near or something.
It said
but
multiple of them tested positive for
Oh,
COVID.
okay. Well, yeah. So I guess that's why. Because yeah, it wasn't really. It kind of came up like 20 minutes before the game was supposed to happen, and it came out that they weren't going to play and Oregon was just going to move on. So I had Oregon winning anyways. I feel like they probably would have won, but like we've seen the first round, anyone could win one game, especially when it's a 10-7 matchup. But if they beat Iowa, then they're up 10 right now with 15 minutes left. So not saying it proves that they would have won that first round, but it definitely shows how it's more deserving that at least they beat a team in Iowa as the number 2 seed for a reason.
Oh, it's definitely not over yet. I mean,
no, it's not. But
there's 14 minutes left. I mean,
it's not. But I'm just saying if they hold on to win, then it shows something though.
100%. As far as, I mean, do you have anything left on? I'll just get into NFL stuff if you want.
Yeah.
But there's been a bunch of, I mean, there's again so much stuff going on this weekend. A bunch of NFL free agency signings. I mean, we'll start with, I guess as far as the quarterback department's concerned, Trubisky signed with the Bills, which to me at the time was somewhat of a head scratcher, and I'm not necessarily a head scratcher, but I was surprised that Trubisky would go to the Bills. I was expecting Trubisky to go to a team, maybe not necessarily the Saints, but a team like the Saints where he might not be the favorite to be the starter, but he has a chance to actually compete in camp. And I think this is a solid decision long-term for Trubisky to go to the Bills and say, you know what, I'm not going to start this year unless, again, Josh Allen gets hurt. But I'm not going to start this year. I'm not expecting to play. I'm going to sit behind Allen. I'm going to soak in what Daboll has to say to me. And if Daboll gets a head coaching offer somewhere, maybe he takes me with him, and then I'm there. I'm a franchise quarterback where I get probably the most highly hyped up coach going with me. I mean, Daboll is probably going to be the number one coaching prospect next year. So I'll get Daboll with me. I'll be the starter. I think it's a good move for Trubisky. I mean, as far as the Bills are concerned, I mean, I guess you get a really solid backup quarterback, and now you've got Trubisky, Matt Barkley, and the guy from, I think, last year, Jake Fromm.
Yeah.
So, I mean, not all three of those guys are going to be on the roster, obviously. I would assume Barkley gets cut, maybe Fromm. I'm not really, but one of them will get cut. Yeah, I think what do you think on that move?
Yeah, it's more for Trubisky, obviously, than the Bills. But, yeah, it was a 1-year contract, but it's, he's not going to play unless Allen does get injured. But he's most likely not going to play, and he's just going to look to compete for a starting job. Whether Daboll gets a job, which he most likely will next year, and he takes him with him to compete for a job. Maybe he says he can be the starter if he sees real improvement with him this season. He can maybe go to a different team, compete for a job in training camp. So he definitely has a lot of options after this year, where teams are definitely going to give him a shot because he clearly he doesn't have the most talent, but he's mobile. His arm isn't great, but it's good. It's good enough for maybe a team that's kind of like 500, a little less than 500. But he has some ability, and he is over 500 in his career, and you could say it's the defense or maybe just the teams that they were playing in their division or other teams. But I think he's 27-21 for his career. So he's not terrible. He can win some games. Is he going to win playoff games? Probably not, but he can definitely win you 8 games in a season if he has to. If he's a starting quarterback for a decent enough team, I say you could probably win 7 games, 8 games at most, which is never a bad thing for any team that's, not going to make the playoffs, So I think he could definitely get a job next year. But, for the rest of his career, he's most likely going to be a, backup, I would say.
No, I would 100% agree. I do think it's a great move for Trubisky, but I also don't think Trubisky is good at all. I don't, even if he gets a job with Daboll at another team, I mean, that's a bad move for Daboll in my opinion. I would not go somewhere to be a head coach and then have Trubisky as my plan for my starting quarterback. That's for sure. Yeah, I think this is probably what he's going to be in the future, which is probably the 33rd best quarterback in the NFL. Maybe even, he'll probably be between 30 and 35 for the rest of his career. maybe 25 and 35, and I think he'll probably just end up being not necessarily the same play style as a Ryan Fitzpatrick, but in that kind of category where it's like, he's a bad starter, but if you have him as your backup, you can't really get much better than that.
Yeah.
Staying on the Bills, Emmanuel Sanders signed a 1-year contract. I mean, I like the contract. If you're the Bills, you want to get as much weapons around Allen as you can. It was only like 1 year, $6 million for Sanders, so obviously you're not tied up long term. Just 1 year, $6 million, going all in for this year. I mean, not necessarily all in, but I mean, Sanders is a great receiver, and I definitely don't think he's cooked at all. So I think 1 year, $6 million is a solid contract for somebody like him.
Yeah, I thought it was a really good pickup for the Bills. They already had obviously Diggs, who's your clear number one. You have Beasley, who is getting older, but he's still pretty good, but he has had some injury issues. So you have Sanders, they're kind of similar players. Sanders can play more outside, but then you also had your rookie wide receiver last year, Gabriel Davis, he showed flashes. So for him to be your fourth receiver, that's a pretty good top four, especially when you think of the Bills and you think about over the last 10 years, they really haven't had a receiver. Maybe Kelvin Benjamin was their best receiver for a year maybe, but even then that's kind of stretching it. So to have four pretty good receivers, three I would say, and then Gabriel Davis has shown potential. They're definitely still one of the top teams in the AFC. I think it's more so on their defense than their offense. I'm just going to assume that Allen is still going to play like a top 5 quarterback or a top 7 quarterback. So this is a really good move, and the rest of their free agent moves were kind of re-signing pieces that they had over the last couple years. So I think the Bills are probably a top 3 team in the AFC, along with the Chiefs, and then whoever that third team is, I don't know. Maybe it's the Colts, maybe it's the Browns, who knows, the Ravens, but I would say they're definitely still a contender for Super Bowl after their moves.
100% a contender. 100% a contender. I expect a drop off from the Bills. I'm not going to get too much into the predictions because I'm sure we'll get into that later as the season gets closer to us. But yeah, I mean, personally, I think I like their moves. It's going to be tough to see if Josh Allen, with now playing in a first place schedule, and definitely going to be most likely a more difficult schedule than last year, if he can continue to be he was probably a top 5 quarterback last year, so if he can continue to be top 5, I don't expect that. I expect him to probably be around that 8 to 10 range in terms of best quarterback. I expect him to kind of drop off just a little bit. But yeah, I mean, I like the Sanders move, the Trubisky move. I mean, it doesn't mean much for the Bills, but I think, if you need Trubisky to keep the boat afloat for a little bit, I mean, he can definitely do that. The Dolphins staying in the AFC East, I mean, they signed Will Fuller to a 1-year deal. I think it was $10.5 million fully guaranteed. I mean, I like the deal as well. It's a 1-year deal. I don't think Will Fuller's a great receiver, but I guess what else were you gonna do with the money? So I don't hate the Will Fuller deal.
Yeah, and he's gonna be suspended for the first game of the season, but after that he's gonna be fine. But I mean, if you look at his year last year, technically it was on PEDs, but he in the games that he did play, I think he had I don't know how many touchdowns exactly he had. I think he may have had 9 or 10, and I think he played basically half the games. So he was really productive last year on a team. I know they had Watson, but they really weren't that good of an offense. So to go to the Dolphins, assuming Tua is going to be the starting quarterback for their team, it at least gives him a weapon. I'd assume they also draft a wide receiver with their third pick in the draft.
If they don't trade out, I think they take.
Yeah, if they don't trade out, maybe they even trade down a couple picks and maybe still take someone. I don't know, but I would assume they take a wide receiver with that pick. So to have Fuller there on a 1-year contract, he's obviously has speed. He could stretch the field. So yeah, I think it's a pretty good contract, pretty good pickup for them.
Yeah, they also signed former Pats nose tackle. I mean, Adam Butler. I mean, I'm sure you probably don't have much to say about it. I mean, it's a good pickup for them, though. He's a solid player. The Patriots, I mean, they had a couple signings I don't think we had the chance to talk about. I mean, Aguilar signed. I don't think we talked about that. Kendrick Bourne signed. I don't think we talked about that. Hunter Henry signed. I don't think we talked about that. David Andrews re-signed on a really good deal. I mean, 4 years and $19 million. That's a steal for Andrews. I mean, he clearly took way less money to stay. And that's why initially there was the report that, I don't know if you saw the report, but he was gone. That was the report, and yeah, Edelman even made a post about that on Instagram. But Yeah, I mean, I'm surprised to see him back. It's good for the offensive line though, because if Ted Karras, he's just a backup, he's just your standard backup flex guard who can kind of just plug a hole if somebody gets injured. If he had to be the starter, that would not be great. So to see Andrews back is good. I mean, what do you think about the Hunter Henry signing?
Yeah, it was.
3 years, 37 mil, 25 mil guaranteed.
Yeah, I think that's. I mean, they're going back to what they used to do with Gronk and Aaron Hernandez with a two tight end system, which they've kind of gone away from because they just haven't had tight ends like that the last couple years. So to get Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry again, they're kind of similar in that they're decent at run blocking. They're like good, not great, but they're really good at pass catching. And I know they got Kendrick Bourne and Nelson Aguilar, and they'll probably trade N'Keal Harry, I would assume, or maybe even like cut him. I don't know, but they don't. They have they upgraded their weapons, but they're really going to rely on those tight end spots. And it seems like Cam is going to be the starting quarterback unless they draft Mac Jones or Trey Lance or whoever they do. But to get those two tight ends, then they may have overpaid for Jonnu Smith, but I think those are valuable pickups for this team. And once you get your quarterback in place, I think that their offense will be even more evolved with a quarterback who can actually move the ball downfield.
I mean, this puts more pressure on Cam, believe it or not, at least in my mind, because now he's got the weapons. I mean, he's got Smith and Henry, which alone is enough to, he can't do what he did last year. He can't throw 10 picks, 8 touchdowns. That's not going to be acceptable. I mean, quickly, as far as Aguilar and Bourne are concerned, I'm slightly disappointed because Aguilar is the wide receiver we're getting. Like, this is the key guy that we're bringing into wide receiver core this year. I don't love it. 2 years, 26 million. I'm not a big fan of it. I think you could have gotten a better guy than Aguilar. I'm not telling you to go get Galladay, because Galladay would have been 4 years at least, probably like 4 years, 80 mil. I'm not saying that, but I don't know. I'm slightly disappointed in Aguilar. I think the Bourne signing he's a three guy. He's a 3 or 4 receiver. And he's not anything other than that. I mean, it didn't seem like you were going to get like somebody like Juju, because it seemed like Juju just wanted to stay with the Steelers, and he was willing to do with what he was willing to just take. I mean, 1 year, $8 million or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I was disappointed in the Aguilar signing, really.
Yeah, and speaking of Galladay, I mean, he signed with the Giants 4 years, $72 million. So that's kind of where people thought he was going to be. It was going to be under 20 mil, which is the elite wide receivers. He had 18 mil per season. I mean, for the Giants, they needed a wide receiver like this. They have Slay, and they have Ingram. They also got Kyle Rudolph. They also picked up John Ross. I mean, we'll see what happens with him. He's kind of a bust, honestly. He definitely is a bust. So maybe he can provide some down the field presence for them. But for Galladay, if he can stay healthy, he's a really good wide receiver. I think this more matters about their quarterback than getting a wide receiver, because it seems like people still think Daniel Jones can be that guy. I don't know if he can. I think he can be an average quarterback who can maybe get your team to the playoffs, but he's not going to be the reason that you're winning playoff games. I think it's going to be their defense, which they've clearly made an emphasis on this past year. They also re-signed Leonard Williams. We talked about that. So I think that this will have an impact on them. But I think it more matters about Daniel Jones' improvement rather than just getting him a weapon, because he hasn't shown enough the first 2 years to be like, if you give him a true number one wide receiver, which we still don't really know if Galladay is, we think he is, then he'll turn into a top 10 quarterback. I don't think that's the answer. I think it's getting the wide receiver helps, but you need him to improve with his own skills first, and then you could see if he could be possibly a top 10 quarterback.
I mean, I think Jones has probably, to me, I mean, he's going to get the full year to prove whether or not he's actually the guy. But to me, I only need to see probably 8 weeks, half the year. Give me until probably maybe around Thanksgiving-ish. I don't think he is the guy, honestly. I just don't think he's that good. I think he was clearly a reach at 3, regardless if you think he's good or not.
It was like 6.
6. Sorry, 6. I think it was, yeah. Sorry, at 6 he was a reach.
Yeah.
At the time people were saying probably a second round quarterback. To be taking at 6, I mean, you better be hitting on that pick at 6 if you're taking that big of a reach there. I don't think he's the guy. I don't even like the Galladay signing, really. like you said, I mean, he's not even probably he might not even be a number one. He might be a 1A or a one. He's probably a 1B.
Yeah, I think he's a 1B.
I don't think he's. I just don't think he's that number one guy. And if he is your number one, you're not in the worst position, but you're not in a great one either. I think the Giants need more help offensively, whether it be at quarterback or if you want to, compensate for not the greatest quarterback and get another wide receiver, whether it be through the draft or something. But yeah, I mean, Galladay's going to be 28 this year, 4 years, 72 million. Meh, I don't love it. I really don't. I don't think it's. If I'm the Giants, I don't think I'm doing that. So.
Yeah, no, there's definitely cause for concern. Like we said, he was basically injured all of last year. He's had injury problems, and you're right. He is 28. He's not 25. So we'll see over the length of this contract if it actually works out. But I think the two biggest things is Jones, and then when Saquon comes back, which I would assume be the start of the season. It was only a torn ACL, and it happened I think like week 2 or week 3. But if he can be like that true workhorse in your backfield, then you may have a chance because you can limit Daniel Jones' opportunities passing the ball. But I mean, personally, I don't think Saquon's that type of running back. I think he's too, I don't know if gimmicky is the word, but he's too hit and miss. Like he'll have like a 60-yard run and then he'll have 10 rushes for 12 yards the rest of the game. So if he can be more consistent, then possibly. But I don't know. Obviously I'm a Cowboy fan, so I don't really like the Giants. I don't really see him being like a 10-7 team. Is that what it is now? I guess it would be 10-7 or 11-6, whatever they'll be. I don't see them being that type of team. I think they'll still be 500. But unless Daniel Jones really improves, which I don't think he will. I think we're on the same page about Daniel Jones.
They have a chance to compete for the division, but they have a chance to, week 11, we may be saying, hey, the Giants have a chance to win this division. But are they actually going to win it? In my mind, I just don't see them doing it. I see them being around that 8-9 or 9-8 range. So yeah, but other free agency signings. Obviously, you talked about John Ross. I mean, maybe it works out. If it doesn't, who cares? The Fitzpatrick signing on the Washington football team. He's going to be there. It seems like he's just going to be their quarterback next year. To me, I think people have really liked this signing, which I was kind of surprised by. I didn't think it was this signing was going to get a lot of love, but to me, I'm just not. I don't know that I love the signing. I mean, I don't think Fitzpatrick's a great quarterback. I think people think he's better than he really is. Again, he's probably in that he's probably in that 25 to 35 quarterback range, probably closer to that 35. He's probably the 30th best quarterback in the league around. He can win you a few games. Fitzmagic, that's not just a random nickname that's a nickname for a reason. It's not random. He can win you a few games, but he's going to lose you a lot. I mean, he's going to lose you a few games, and you're going to say, okay, we lost this game because Fitzpatrick either made this mistake or he couldn't make this throw. I don't think it's a great signing. If he's your quarterback, I'm not going to pick the Washington football team to win this division with Fitzpatrick as the quarterback. If you had somebody else there's a chance I could pick you to win the division. I mean, I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that the Cowboys win this division. They're definitely the favorites, but I don't think it's a foregone conclusion. I mean, what do you think about the Fitzpatrick signing?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I would say he's good for like spurts, like 3 or 4 game spurts, and then he kind of falls off. So if you were to like kind of go him and then Heineke, maybe back and forth, kind of like what they were doing with Tua and Fitzpatrick, maybe it could work because their team is kind of similar to the Dolphins, which Fitzpatrick was on last year, where they have a really good defense, and offensively they're not great, but they're good enough, I guess. If you have a good game,
they're probably better than the Dolphins offensively, just because they just got Samuel, who we can talk about now, and now they got McLaurin and Gibson.
Yeah, I mean, if Gibson and McLaurin can stay healthy, then yeah, because you have Samuel, who again he's not a number 2, and McLaurin, he's probably not even a number 1. He's probably more of a number 2, but those are guys who are pretty good wide receivers who, along with Gibson, that's a pretty good trio of skill players that you have. But you're right. I mean, it depends on what Fitzpatrick is going to do. If he's going to be the guy who comes in and goes for 300 and 2 touchdowns with no picks, or is he the guy with those 3 picks? Because he kind of switches every single game where he can do that. So if he could be somewhat consistent for the whole season, or maybe they go back and forth between him and Heineke, and their defense can lead them, I would say maybe they can get to 9 games. I don't see this team being a double-digit team in wins, but I would say maybe 8 or 9 games they could probably win.
other quarterback notable signing, Dalton to the Bears.
Yeah, I mean that one. I don't think people are very happy with that. At least Bears fans.
No.
I think they thought they were going to get Watson or Wilson, which it seemed like Wilson was the more reasonable one. But why would the Seahawks want to trade Russell Wilson?
Did you see the offer that reportedly they sent to Seattle, but Seattle declined? It was.
I don't know if I saw it.
It was 3 firsts, a third, and 2 starters. I want to say.
Yeah, it's. I mean, what would be the point of Seattle doing a trade if they're not getting back a quarterback? So, and the Bears had no quarterbacks to give. So it just didn't really make any sense as to why Bears fans really thought they were going to get Wilson. Because if you just look at a trade, I know the Bears are very aggressive in trying to get a trade done, but there was no like route to get a trade done if you're not going to give back. Because the Seahawks are still a playoff team, so why would they give up a top 5 quarterback and not get a quarterback in return? It just didn't make any sense.
Yeah, no. If you're trading Wilson, you need a backup plan for quarterback, whether it be a super high pick that you can get a Justin Fields or a Zach Wilson with, or just an actual solid quarterback to get in return, like maybe like a Darnold or something. But yeah, I mean, the Bears offered, it was 3 firsts, a third, and 2 starters for Wilson. The Seahawks just told them that we're not trading Wilson at this time. So yeah, I mean, obviously I don't like the Dalton signing, but I don't know if you had any better options. I mean, who would you rather have as your starter for next year, Dalton or Trubisky?
I mean, I guess this team still thinks they're a playoff team, but maybe Dalton, but I honestly wouldn't be opposed to Trubisky. I think they were kind of just done with him. It seemed like Matt Nagy, their coach, was just completely done with Trubisky. So, and he's going to get fired most likely after the season, along with their GM Ryan Pace. So, for them basically being on their last legs and to get Andy Dalton, it's just I think it's just going to be a disaster in Chicago. I just don't see Dalton. I mean, he was good with the Cowboys last year, but he's not good enough to lead your team to victories. And the Bears team, obviously they let go Kyle Fuller, which we'll talk about probably later, but they're just not good enough to win games with their defense. And Allen Robinson is most likely going to want to get traded still. So what other weapons do they have on their team? It's just, I don't know. I feel like that's going to be a disaster this season.
I mean, I think Robinson probably actually plays out the year. I mean, he's going to play on this franchise tag, which is I think 18 mil. I don't think he'll want to get traded. But I don't think he's going to. I think he'll probably play the rest of this year out. I think they're going to want to compete. I mean, I don't think Pace is going to trade Robinson because, I mean, like you said, he's fighting for his job here. So is Nagy. I mean, I think he plays the year. But yeah, I mean, this team, they're another 8 and 9 team probably, and the NFC North is not a super forgiving division. I think the Vikings probably rebound from last year. The Packers are going to be there again. They're going to be right there probably in the NFC Championship game. So,
and I guess the biggest signing that we actually didn't talk about because it happened after our kind of free agency podcast was the Trent Williams contract. He signed for 6 years, $138 million. I'm not sure exactly how much of that was guaranteed, but it's the biggest contract in I think it was just offensive line history. I don't think it was just tackle, which, I mean, clearly tackles get paid the most. But, yeah, I mean, I think he's 30 years old, I want to say. So it's a big contract for a guy who has battled a lot of injuries in his career, also missed a season because of health-related stuff, and then he sat out the second half of that season. But he's still one of the best offensive linemen in football, but it's definitely a huge contract.
He's 32 right now.
He's 32, so yeah, he's even 2 years older than I thought. So it's a pretty big contract for someone of his age and some of his injury history too.
He's just been so good. I mean, throughout his whole career, he's been elite basically every single year, Pro Bowl level, if not all pro level. So yeah, I don't know if I love the contract, but some team was probably going to give him that money or at least close to it. So I don't think it's a bad signing for the 49ers. I mean, so protecting, obviously, and locking up a tackle like that for 6 years, I think it'll be good for probably at least half of that still. So,
and I mean, I guess we kind of touched on it earlier, but Juju going back to the Steelers, like you said, it was a 1 year, $8 million contract. The reports were that the Ravens really wanted to get him, and I don't know if they ever made an offer, but it seemed like they really wanted him. And
Both the Chiefs and the Ravens made
yeah,
better offers.
and the Chiefs. I forgot about the Chiefs, and he said no and just wanted to go back to Pittsburgh, which it seemed like that's what he was going to do all along. But I'd be curious to see if they did offer something, what it was, because Juju's not. Like what kind of money would he get? Probably like 12 to 15 million on a multi-year deal, I'd say.
I don't think so. I think
I mean, on a
the
multi-year
Ravens
deal,
and
I'd say.
Chiefs. I think the Ravens and the Chiefs are probably offering somewhere in that 10 to 11 range in this depressed market. If it was a normal year, I think probably in that 12 to 14 range. But yeah, I mean, I think the Ravens were probably offering him 10, 11, and he decided to go back to the Steelers on a 1 year, $8 million. And I think he's going to be disappointed next offseason because, I mean, he clearly wants to stay in Pittsburgh. I think if Pittsburgh was willing to give him multi-years, I think Juju probably would have taken the multi-year deal. I'm not too sure. Who knows? Maybe he just wants to hit the market again in a not depressed market. But I think he's going to be disappointed again next offseason because he's going to realize the Steelers just don't care to have him, and they'll only have him back if Juju Smith is willing to take, solid pay cuts.
Yeah, I think that was his plan, was to hit the market next year, but I think you're right. I don't think he's going to see that huge contract that he's maybe expecting, unless he just has a huge year this year, which I don't think he will. But I think for him, I think he hit the market. He's going to hit the market just at a wrong time, because if he had I know he was a rookie, obviously, when it happened, but that huge season he had with AB, if he was still playing with Antonio Brown, and let's say he didn't go crazy and everything like that, he would be one of the top wide receiver free agents, just because people would think that he could elevate to that number one spot. But that kind of happened too early in his career, and he kind of hit the market at the wrong time.
Yeah. Carson to the Seahawks, back to the Seahawks, 2 year, $14 million. I mean, not too much to take away from that. The Cardinals have signed low-key a lot of veteran guys. I mean, they signed Green to a 1 year, $6 million. They signed they traded for Hudson. I think it was they traded a third round for Hudson, who's old as well. I mean, obviously Watt, who we knew that. I mean, what do you think about the Cardinals? I mean, I guess the Green signing in the Hudson trade.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much AJ Green's going to bring to the Cardinals, but I guess it's a signing that I guess they have him, Fitz, and Hopkins as their three best wide receivers. I don't even know how much AJ Green's really going to play, honestly. Just looking at his last couple of years, he has not been that productive.
He's garbage. And yeah. I wasn't even a big fan of him back when he was in his prime. And not that he's a bad wide receiver. He was a clear number one guy, but he was a super soft receiver. I mean, I don't know if it was playing for the Bengals or not, but when he played like a guy like a Revis or a Gilmore, or even, if you want to go to like a Ramsey or type of guy, these types of cornerbacks, so he was super soft. When he was pushed around on the line, he wasn't looking to. He just didn't fight back, and I never loved AJ Green. I don't think he's not that type of receiver that I would love to have on my team. I mean, I would much prefer to have when AB was normal, I prefer to have an AB, or I prefer to have a Julio, or not. And those guys are probably better than Green regardless, but just in terms of personality and fight, and obviously, I mean, AB is different now, but before then.
Yeah, well, I mean, his type of receiver is just out of the league. Like a Demaryius Thomas, like those are the type of receivers that he was, which played 5-10 years ago. But now you need guys who are speedy and very shifty, and who aren't guys who just go for 50-50 balls every single time and basically run a couple routes in a route tree, which is what he does. So the league kind of outgrew his type of play. So I don't know how much of an impact he's going to have. I guess he can have some. But I think the Rodney Hudson trade's a pretty good trade because they need to beef up their offensive line. I know he's a center, so it's not the most important position, but to get basically a perennial Pro Bowler like Hudson, I think that's a pretty big upgrade. I know they re-signed another offensive lineman also, so to get Murray that protection, I think was their biggest need, and they got two guys who can do that. And then obviously, I mean, I think this will be Cliff Kingsbury's kind of prove it year, I would say. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets fired after this season, if they don't make the playoffs or at least have a really productive year, which I don't think that's the worst thing if he gets fired. That's probably the best thing for that team going in the future. But these, the AJ Green could be somewhat, limited the impact, but I think Rodney Hudson's a pretty big addition to their team.
You're 100% right about Kingsbury. This is his year. I don't know if he. I mean, I would expect them to be around that 9-8 range again, and I think they'd be better if they were not in the by far the best division in the league. But they are, and I think ownership expects Kingsbury to get that team to the playoffs, and if they don't, I think there's definitely a solid chance he gets fired. But I think that's basically it. I mean, Pat Pete to the Vikings on a 1 year, 10 mil, old. I don't really love the signing.
He's not the same player he was.
He's nowhere near the same player. Yeah.
Oh, I mean the Cowboys getting Keanu Neal.
And it looks like he's switching to linebacker.
Yeah, he's going to play linebacker for us. So
and there's no guarantee he even makes the roster, but
what?
I said there's no guarantee he makes the roster.
I mean, I think he'll make the roster.
I mean, I think he will, but I mean, he's one of those veteran guys that's on a very cheap deal. I mean, like I wouldn't be surprised if Pat Pete didn't make the roster.
Well, the thing is, I mean, he is a veteran guy, but he's only 25 years old. So I'd be surprised if he didn't make the roster, especially since Dan Quinn's there, Joe Witt Jr. is there, who was also a defensive back coach for the Falcons when Keanu Neal was with them. So I expect him to be on the team. I don't know why he wouldn't.
No, I do too, but I'm saying he might just be washed. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. And I
don't think he's washed. I mean, if you look at his year last year, he had a very productive year. He's just been injured the last couple of years. That's
exactly.
But it doesn't mean he's washed, though. He's just been injured.
Well, but okay. I'm not saying he's not going to make the team. I'm just saying I wouldn't be surprised. I think he's not necessarily an AJ Green. He's not super old washed. But yeah, I mean, I think there's a chance he doesn't make the team. He's only in a 1 year, $5 million deal. It's not easy. He's not a hard player to cut or anything. So I mean, I think he'll make the team, and I think he'll be productive. He's definitely been a solid player. So, but yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see what that switch looks like to linebacker. I'm not exactly sure what that's going to look like, but
well, I think he is a linebacker. I mean, he's not a good coverage guy. He's like a Jamal Adams, but just not obviously as talented as Jamal Adams is. But he's that guy where he plays safety, but is really a linebacker where he's not good in pass coverage and he's not good at picking the ball off or deflecting balls. If he was a linebacker his whole career, he'd be a top linebacker, but he just happened to play safety. He's kind of like Budda Baker, like Jamal Adams, like those type of guys. Mark Barron, he was obviously a safety that went to linebacker and was more productive. So I think he's just a guy who's like Isaiah Simmons also. Last year we got drafted. He could play linebacker, but he could also play safety, the nickel. He could play so many positions. That's kind of like what Keanu Neal does.
We technically didn't talk about Joe Thuney.
Did we not?
No, we didn't. Because I made the TikTok about that. We'll talk about that later.
And they also the Chiefs also signed Kyle Long, who came out of retirement.
Yeah. I mean, he might be a guy that doesn't make the roster. I'm betting on the fact I don't think he will make the roster. I don't think he will.
I think he will. I mean, to come out of retirement and then get a contract like that, I feel like you're almost guaranteed.
It's a $1.5 million deal.
Yeah, but I don't know. Just coming out of retirement like that for a pretty good offensive lineman for a team that needs help on their offensive line, I'd just be surprised if he did get cut, unless he's just not even close to the same player that he was before he retired.
I think
which is a possibility.
Yeah.
But
I don't know. I don't know if you made me bet. I'm not exactly sure which way I'd go, but he's a guy that I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't make the roster. But Thuney, 5 years, $80 million. I think it's a solid contract. I mean, he's a guy that. I mean, I've seen him as a Pats fan for the first 5 years of his career, or 4 years. I think it's 5. He's started every single game that he's played in. He started all of his years. He's started all 16 games. He's not a guy that gets hurt. I mean, like I said in the TikTok, which you can feel free to check out. I'll talk about it later, but he may not be your Quentin Nelson type of guard, and he might not be your Zach Martin in your prime type of guard, but he's super good. He's an A- guard. And he's on a fine deal. He's not injury prone. He's going to probably start every single game of that contract, or if not, pretty close to it, unless there's a freak injury. But yeah, I like the contract. I mean, obviously, we saw protecting Mahomes is going to be huge going forward. So.
And I'd say the last big contract that we didn't get to talk about, which honestly kind of went under the radar, I'd say, was Bud Dupree. He got a 5-year contract from the Titans for $85 million. I'm not sure what the guaranteed money on that was, but obviously Dupree, $35 million. So, yeah, I mean, that's a pretty good contract for someone who's been productive on the Steelers. He obviously tore his ACL, I want to say like halfway through last season, but I would say if he didn't tear his ACL, he probably would still be on the Steelers, but They didn't franchise him. They let him go. He goes to the Titans, a team that needs someone defensively to rush the quarterback. They thought they maybe got that in Clowney last year. Obviously, he wasn't the answer. So, for a team that needs defensive help and that, still is, they're still a playoff team. They're not a team that's going to, get to the Super Bowl or anything like that or AFC Championship like they did. But I think it's a good signing for a team that really needed help in that position.
It's not a bad signing. However, I think this is a guy that 3 years into this contract, he could be a cut candidate. I don't think he's that great of a talent. Obviously, they are super desperate for pass rushing, so it's not a horrible contract as far as the Titans, as far as they're concerned. But I don't think he's like that match made in heaven type of guy that you sign to a 5-year, $85 million. I don't think he's as good as a Shaq Barrett. I don't think he's as good as some other pass rushers we've seen on the market recently. We also didn't talk about Justin Simmons, by the way. I don't know if you had anything to say about that, but he got franchise tagged and they agreed on a 4-year, $61 million contract, which to me, I mean, would you rather have Bud Dupree, and these are completely different positions, but would you rather have Bud Dupree on a 5-year 85 or Simmons on a 4-year 61? And I know that it's a bit different because Simmons was franchise tagged, but I mean, a 4-year 61 is a bargain in my mind.
Yeah, but I mean, it is a safety, so they're obviously not going to get paid as much. And then looking between a safety and a defensive end, I guess technically he's an outside linebacker, but he's a defensive end. I'd obviously go with the pass rusher because he's just more valuable to my team. But Justin Simmons, he's been very underrated since he got drafted, and it's basically because the Broncos have been bad, and he's also a safety, so people just kind of overlook. But for that contract, that's a pretty good contract for him. There's not much to say only because people just don't really talk about him, but he, for someone like the Broncos and again, they signed Kyle Fuller to a 1-year, $9.5 million deal, who I really want the Cowboys to sign. I just don't know if they had they didn't have the relationship. Like, they're obviously the Broncos head coach is Vic Fangio, which was defensive coordinator for the Bears when Fuller had his best season in 2018, but, yeah, those are two really good. Obviously, Simmons was a re-sign, but they got Fuller. They also got Ronald Darby for the Broncos. So if the Broncos could figure out their quarterback situation, they could be – obviously, they wouldn't be like a threat, but they could be a somewhat playoff contender because they do have a pretty decent team.
I agree.
I think they'd obviously need a new head coach. Fangio's not that type of coach, but I think next year, I think the Broncos could be a very good team if they could figure out their quarterback situation.
They were a sleeper last year, and I don't know if I don't think I predicted them to make the playoffs, but they were a sleeper team according to a solid amount of people, and I think they could be a sleeper team this year. I mean, they're going to get Cortland Sutton, obviously
fully healthy again.
Jerry Jeudy. It's going to come down to the quarterback. I mean, you have Melvin Gordon as your running back. Obviously, losing Philip Lindsay is kind of a blow, but I mean, it's really not much of a blow. You've got two solid receivers. One of them could be a 1A. They could be a 1A, 1B. I mean, they're both full of potential, clearly. Yeah, I mean, I think if they can figure a quarterback, yeah, 100%.
And I guess kind of maybe not breaking news, but I guess for when it's happening, Iowa just lost to Oregon 95-80, so that probably busted some more people's brackets with that. So Oregon did hold on to beat Iowa, so that's another 1-2 seed that went down early in the tournament.
Yeah, no, that's actually crazy. Yeah. And it looks like Watkins visiting with the Ravens today. I mean, not that really means much, but yeah. Yeah, I mean, Iowa losing, that's actually crazy.
Yeah, so that's, what is that? That's Illinois is down, Iowa's down, Ohio State is down. I mean, out of the tournament, obviously.
Texas as well.
Yeah, Texas, West Virginia. So a lot of high-seeded teams, which honestly for this year, obviously Virginia lost first round too. I picked Ohio in that game. And I know college, I didn't really follow it that much this season, but I do know that there really wasn't a clear, I guess Gonzaga and Baylor were the clear-cut two best teams in the country, but really other than that, a lot of the other teams, the top teams that you'd think, lost a lot of games, and as we've seen in the tournament so far, they haven't been the dominant top seeds that you would think would, that we usually see in March Madness.
So Gonzaga plays in 20 minutes from now. So, by the time people see this episode, they'll have played. But I'm excited to see that game just because, I mean, I think they're definitely the clear-cut number one team going into the tournament, and they're still the clear-cut number one team. I think they're what most people are picking to win the tournament. They beat Norfolk State a few days ago, 2 days ago they beat them by like 40. So if they can blow out Oklahoma, then I'll probably have some confidence in Gonzaga. But maybe it's just because of the past however many years, a lot of years that Gonzaga's kind of just disappointed, and they've never. Maybe it's also because they never really produced great NBA talent. Not that that means anything to do with college basketball. Maybe it's just a slight bias of mine. I've never been too big into Gonzaga. I actually picked them to lose, I think, in the Sweet 16, which I don't think many people would pick that at all. But, yeah, I'm excited to watch that game against Oklahoma.
Yeah, I thought they were the best team going into the tournament, and I picked them to win, so I thought they just were the best team. They also had a pretty easy path, honestly. But I think that game's going to happen in 20 minutes. You guys will know what the score is, but I expect them to be a pretty dominant showing against Oklahoma. But
yeah, I mean that's it though, right?
Yeah, I was going to say I think that's about it. So that's basically everything free agency wise. Maybe there's a couple names that are still out there, but no huge names that are still really out there. So it's really, for NFL, it's really just getting to the draft, which is in a month and I think a week, or maybe even just a month and a couple days. So that we'll do something about that. We'll make a top 15 list, maybe even for whole first round. Who knows? But we'll at least do something for that. And then we'll obviously be talking about it. Who goes? Obviously, I think people know who's going to go 1, but who goes 2, 3, 4, 5? Where the quarterbacks all go. So that'll be very interesting when we get to that.
Yeah, I'm hyped for the NFL draft. As far as other stuff is concerned, not about the show. The whole 9 yards is a TikTok that'll be in the description. Obviously, the normal stuff will be in the description. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, other social medias. Please follow them if you want. If not, that's fine. Feel free to post or whatever, do whatever. Should be uploading TikTok somewhat consistently. We made a couple of videos about a couple of signings. I know I made one about the Tooney signing, so feel free to check all that stuff out. Obviously, the Clips YouTube channel as well. We're still looking to upload on that, so look at everything in the description. Brandon, you have anything else to say?
No, I would say that's it. So I guess our next episode is going to be Friday, so you can go check that out when that goes out also.
Friday at noon. All right, bye.